Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Foresight TV. I've got my good friend Denise Boudreau on. We are going to be talking about culture and wonderful things, and Martha Atwood with Sequoia Living. Martha, I don't think we've met before, so I'm excited to be able to have this conversation. But before we get started, this. Hey guys, Steve Moran here. Martha, Denise, welcome to Foresight TV. Happy Friday. Denise, I'm going to start with you. I'd like to have you talk a little bit about who you are, what you do, in case somebody doesn't know who you are, which seems hard to imagine. And then I'd like to have you introduce Martha as well.
Awesome. Great. So I'm Denise Boudreau. I'm president of a company called Drive that I started 13 years ago to work with organizations on improving organizational culture, which basically just means how do we work around here? And we want to think about how we work around here because it impacts recruitment, it impacts retention, it impacts occupancy, literally every single outcome in your organization. It impacts, and most importantly, it impacts the people that work there and the people that receive services in your organization. So that's a little bit about what I do. And Martha Atwood is the Chief People Officer for Sequoia Living in San Francisco, and is just doing incredible work. I always tell her she's not only doing incredible work at Sequoia, but also inspiring a lot of other organizations on our field with the work that her and the team are doing there.
Terrific. And Martha, tell us a little bit about you.
Well, thank you. It's wonderful to be here. Nice to meet you, Steve. I've been working for Sequoia Living for quite some time. I tend to say I've been there 100 years, not quite that long, but I love working in the senior living industry. I feel that, we're doing great things for residents and our team members.
Great. I am so glad you are here with us, Martha. It looks like we've got a little bit of a technical detail challenge here. Your voice is a little delayed. Jada, we'll see if she can do a little bit of troubleshooting. I think there's some things we might do. So you might watch the private chat. She may have a couple suggestions for you. But I want to get started. As I do that, I'm going to actually, we have a list of questions I worked on. Denise, I'm going to jump to you first. Okay. You have worked with more communities than just about anybody else in the industry. And that means that you get to see some really good stuff and some not so good stuff. What is it about Sequoia Living that made you just go, wow, there's something different here?
Yeah, their intentionality, that they take this information that we work on. So we do a culture values assessment with them, and we did a leadership team values assessment to measure the culture of the organization, all the team members, and the culture of the leadership team. And starting with that as our foundation, they were incredibly intentional and still are using that information to improve what was already a great culture. So sometimes I think people, say, well, we've got a great culture, and they guess at it. Sequoia knew it because they measured the culture and their score was wonderful. But then even beyond, they said, what more can we be doing? How can we even continue to raise the bar? And they are so intentional, like I said, about it. So that one word, probably more than anything, makes a difference if an organization sees outcomes like Sequoia has seen, or if they don't see outcomes.
Well, and I think the thing that really struck me as you were talking, Denise, is that when I look at organizations that are struggling, I think the most frustrating part for me is that they seem so unwilling to even acknowledge that there's something to work on. Yeah. And then you've got really great organizations like Sequoia, where they say we're really good, but let's go, come pick at us, and let's see what else we can find to make it better. So yeah. Martha, I want to just jump. Go ahead, Denise.
are said, not a coincidence, right? That's the great.
That's right.
Yeah.
So Martha, you have in just a year, you've doubled your accountability. You've slashed this resistance to change in half. And this is nuts. So what started happening in real life, in the halls, in the break room, the vibe? What told you that something big was shifting?
Yeah, it really started with from the ground up. So we created culture clubs where it's a cross section of our team members from all levels at each community, and they really have brought the values to life. They establish behaviors and actions that they can do each and every day. And what leadership did is got out of the way. They supported the culture clubs, and we let accountability reign through the organization, and each team member is accountable. They have the authority to create um, workshops, they do celebrations, they do activities. Everything is drawn back to our three core values.
Cool. I love that so much. I guess one of the things I sort of struggle with is that, and I actually did a LinkedIn poll about this a few weeks ago. Is the question I asked? LinkedIn only allows you to ask one question, so it's very limited. But the question I asked that's sort of related to this is, how do you feel about icebreakers? And a few people liked them. A lot of people didn't like them. And people just sort of roll their eyes when you start talking about things like culture change, and it feels too lovey-dovey. And it's like, oh man, one more thing, just get out of my way so I can go do my job. How did you work around that and get past sort of that skepticism? Or it almost sounds like you didn't have that skepticism. I don't know.
Well, what we did is we polled our entire workforce and asked them, if we were operating at our very best, what values would you see in the workplace? So we took a different approach working with Denise and let them decide what the values would be. So we already had buy-in from the team members. And I would say we do have skeptics. We still have skeptics. And what we do is we really focus on those who embrace this and really want to make a difference every day.
Yeah, and that's so important, right? Because you go out there and you say, we're going to do these new things, or we're going to be different, or something, people tend to roll their eyes at it, right? So, Denise, you held a retreat that where you really looked at these core values, you talked about them. And most of the time when people do core values, I mean, everybody's got a mission statement, right? And they put up posters and they send out emails and nothing changes. How talk to me about what's different, what you did and what you're doing.
Yeah. And Martha made reference to this when we had our leadership retreat with Sequoia after the original culture values assessment. We took the answer to that question of the desired culture. So if we were performing at our best, what are the top 10 values or behaviors you'd want to see? And we had all that information. We could see those top 10 answers for the organization. And the top 3 are what they chose for their organizational values: accountability, caring, and teamwork. Makes a great acronym, by the way, ACT, A-C-T. So, which is why I can remember it, because I work with so many organizations, but I remember the ones that have acronyms. So accountability, caring, and teamwork. So as Martha said, that immediately got people's buy-in. We then worked on creating what we call commitments, which are we statements. So what would you have to believe to know there was accountability in the organization? What would you have to believe to know that there was caring in the organization? And, it turns out to be things like, we have, people might say things like, we have each other's backs. I'm trying to think your exact ones of your we statements, Martha, the commitment statements, but they're statements that actually start getting people thinking about how do we have to act as a group. And then as Martha shared afterwards, that culture clubs came up, each of their sites individually came up with what are the actual behaviors I would have to do. So they're I statements now to what would be my behavior have to be to live that we commitment. So it's values, these we statements, we'll do this, and then the I statement, which is actually what I have to do when I show up to work each day.
And we
Okay, that's
started
probably good morning,
really.
so I'm going to get in trouble here because I've got so many questions that in addition to what we started with. But the first thing I got to do is I got to back up. You've made several references to this thing called the Culture Club. And I think you better tell us a little bit more about what that is and how that works, because I can see people watching this and going, oh, Culture Club, that sounds pretty cool. I think maybe I need that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and some of them were skeptics too at first. It's really a group of team members. It can be the executive director, it could be housekeepers, nurses, whomever wants to join. We looked for some criteria. So we wanted someone who really had a interest in changing how we show up every day. And they were given, like I said, the authority to do whatever they wanted to do. We had parameters around it. The first question always is, well, how much money do I get to spend? And so many things can be done without money. And they've just created the environment and celebrations where all team members go, show up, they talk about accountability, caring, and teamwork. They celebrate those who behave and model the core values. And I'll go back to the I statements. They were very lofty at first. So our culture clubs were creating very lofty I statements. We said, make it really simple. So it could be as simple as, when I show up for a meeting, I'm on time and my camera's on to show they're participating. So we started very simple. And over time, we changed those I statements because people get it, they grasp it, they live it, and then we change those.
So do you have a sort of a typical format or agenda? How often do they meet? How long do they meet?
Great question. We let each community do what they want to do. But in general, I'd say they meet monthly and they plan an activity. And I call it an activity. It could be something like one community created a tree and they had everyone come and have a leaf, and they wrote down how they believe accountability shows up in their day-to-day work. And they populated the tree. So it kind of relates to the Sequoia Living, the Sequoia tree, but it's really in their words how they see accountability showing up every day. That's just one little example.
Cool. I like that so much. I think that, one of the things that as I read and think about leadership, so much of it has become very lofty, lead from your heart, be a servant leader. And there's nothing wrong with all that, except that it doesn't tell you actually how to do that. And so actually these very practical things of, turning your camera on, so simple, or putting your cell phone down makes all the difference in the world. So Denise, they have this culture score that's like, what is it, 90%? 90? I'm not sure what the scale is. Can you talk to me? I mean, that's insane. What does that mean?
Yeah. So the culture score does go from 0, or I guess 1 to 100. Our average is 69 at Drive. The average for the entire the tool that we use, every field around the entire world, the average is 55. And this is the tool, same tool that we use to measure culture is what Coca-Cola uses, the Ritz-Carlton, Volvo, the car company, Accenture, the consulting company, so forth, PricewaterhouseCoopers. There's huge companies that use this tool. So the culture score is based on a few things. It's based on the current culture that we're seeing. So when we ask the question of the top 10 values and behaviors that you see currently, what are the answers to that? That desired culture that I talked about earlier and that Martha referenced about, if we were performing at our best, what people want to see in that desired culture. How many matches are there between those two things, what we have now and what we want? That's one of the factors in that culture score. Another factor is what percentage of the values in the current culture are limiting, things that are holding you back. And Steve, the things that we see most often for limiting values: confusion, blame, bullying, believe it or not, cost reduction. Now, sometimes we need things like cost reduction. You're really never going to need blame or bullying in your organization, though, right? But sometimes some of these values are just short term until we get over a little hump. Control, for example, is a limiting value. It was appropriate in the beginning of COVID, for example. It's not appropriate year after year after year. So that culture score is made up of what do we have now and what do we want? What do we have now and how much of it is limiting or holding us back as an organization? And the other interesting thing that's part of it also is the third question that we ask are, what are your top 10 personal values? And you kind of think like, you asked it before, aren't people saying like, what is this woo-woo stuff? Like, why do we need to ask people's personal values? And the reason why we ask about people's personal values is when they get to show up authentically themselves, they do better. And when they do better, the organization does better. Customer service is better. Your occupancy is better. Everything is stronger, all of your outcomes in the organization. They stay in their jobs, your turnover is not high, and so forth. And so we look for how many matches are there in the top 10 personal values of the entire organization, personally, what people are wired with, and then what they have right now in the current organization. So that also makes up that score. And that's how we get to that score of 90, for example, for Sequoia Living.
So I need to take a break here and say thanks to our sponsor for this episode, and then I want to get back to the conversation. I want to take a moment to tell you about today's sponsor, SageAge. Here at Foresight, we are passionate about transforming senior living, making it better for residents, families, and team members. SageAge shares that mission. They are more than a marketing agency. They're a strategic growth partner who understands the unique challenges facing senior living communities and organizations today. Whether you need compelling branding, innovative digital strategies, or proven occupancy solutions, SageAge doesn't just talk the talk. They know this industry inside and out. They speak your language, and they deliver measurable results that actually move the needle. If you're ready to grow with purpose and precision, SageAge is ready to be your partner. Check them out at sageage.com. That's SageAge.com. All right, back to the show. I'm looking at that, and those are my glasses that I can't wear anymore because I have brand new eyes, had cataract surgery on both my eyes the last 2 weeks, and so that's why I've got the new version of specs. Denise, one of the questions I have for you is, you talk about these values, and Martha, I think I'd like to hear you weigh in, but Denise, this is sort of for you because you talk to a lot of different organizations. Aren't they kind of always the same? Or are they different?
Yeah. Well, what makes them different is the actions behind them. That's why breaking them down into what we've talked about, these commitments, right? These we statements, and then these I statements. What do I actually have to do is so important, because that's what makes your organization stand out from every other single organization that is out there. And so I just pulled up their statements. So under accountability, for example, we are responsible to ourselves and others. And then each site says, well, what do we have to do? And Steve, when we do this work with the culture clubs, as Sequoia calls them, when we do this work with the culture committees, one of the things we do is when we have the non-supervisory and supervisory staff coming together to create those behaviors, what if you were watching a movie, what would you see that you knew that person was responsible to themselves and others? Like, what would you see? And so that's when we get to the nitty gritty. Like Martha said, maybe it's turning on the camera and showing up and so forth. Or maybe it's this person acknowledging every single person they're walking by, or whatever it may be. But something that's so specific that they can actually see it in a movie without someone explaining it to them.
Well, and again, you're reinforcing what I was talking about earlier. It's behaviors, not thoughts. And I think that's the thing we don't spend enough time talking about, is we need people to teach people how to behave differently. So Drive led some focus groups with team members, frontline team members, And I know that people get really nervous about this because sometimes they just sort of turn into, there's probably a more elegant way to put it, but they turn into bitch sessions. How do you take and do those so that you get good information? Did you hear anything that surprised you? Did you hear anything that excited you? Did you hear anything that you went, oh my God, I had no idea?
I'm going to share the beginning part of that, and I'll let Martha answer the end of that. So the really neat thing, and you're right, most people think about, oh my gosh, all you're going to do is get complaints about we need more staff and we need more money. And it's actually the opposite thing happens. Like, people share and then they leave and they're excited. They're excited to be part of change in the organization. Very often we'll hear, I can't believe the organization even took the time to invest in this. And they're excited about that, right? That the organization cares enough to have a neutral person from the outside ask them these questions and to find out more of what they're really thinking. So quite the opposite. And, I was in operations for 17 years and ED and administrator and so forth. And I would feel the same way when people came to do focus groups, but people leave with this sense of, okay, what can we all do together, rather than this sense of, it just goes down this spiral of negativity. And part of that is how you facilitate the group and, keeping them on track and so forth, and honoring what people are sharing, but at the same time, moving on from a person or a topic that's going to continue to bring the group down. Martha, I guess surprises, we've done them twice for you now over the years.
Yeah, I think I just want to talk a little bit about what we do with the focus group. So people are going to roll their eyes and not want to participate if we don't do anything with the feedback.
Yeah.
And what excites me the most is when we get the feedback, it's an easy thing to correct and it's done right away. So tying it back to, we heard you told us this in a focus group and we're taking action. So that's what brings about real change and the buy-in. And as far as surprises, nothing really surprised me. I think we were a bit taken back about the perception of silos throughout the organization and the communities, maybe not working in conjunction with the home office, the other way around, or silos between departments. So we've really made a concerted effort to break down those silos. And this year, we really started with leadership. So we are taking our senior leadership through the same process. We did a values assessment. We've created I statements, and we bring them to every meeting and not just put them on the wall. Like, this is really how we agree as leaders to show up. Because if we don't start with the leaders, we will not break down the silos and improve the communication.
Yeah. So I want to unpack this silos thing a little bit. I think the problem with silos, and they happen not just in work organizations, they happen in churches and in friendships and all kinds of places. And the problem with silos is, if I'm in a silo that works really well for me, I never see them, right? I think everything is fine, and I assume that if it's fine for me, it's fine for everybody. And I think that almost always, almost by definition, you're going to have some of that between sort of frontline workers and local management, and even more so with the C-suite. So, Denise, how do you? I mean, some of that's probably always going to be there because you still have bosses, right? So, how do you make all that work?
Yeah, I was just thinking as you were sharing this, I had a conversation with somebody last week when I was on site with them, and it's somebody that we're actually doing executive coaching with their team and so forth. And I said to her, one of the things that team really wants is more connection. So actually more meetings. Like, you would never think that, but they don't know what's going on in the organization. They get together once a month as the top leadership team, as the executive team, and people don't know what the goals are in the organization. Nobody knows what anybody else is working on. To your point, like, things happen, there's not communication. And so it's, how can we put in as many of these strategies that it's just going to naturally happen. So if you only meet once a month, guess what? The communication's not going to be great, right? If you commit to, okay, every day we're going to connect for 15 minutes to say what's going on, that communication is going to be a lot better. If we're going to, on a weekly basis, do a little bit deeper of a dive, we're going to spend an hour in a meeting together talking about what's happening in the organization and where we are with our goals, you're going to have better communication. And this person said to me, nobody wants more meetings. We have technology for that. And I said, great, what's the technology that's sharing your goals and then sharing what each person is doing around those goals? Well, we don't have any. So, you can't have it all. You can't have it all the ways. And technology can help you for sure. And I'm not saying every person's got to be in the same office. You could do it by Zoom, but some connection with people is needed. And it's one of the most common things that I see in organizations that people don't know. Even at the executive level, people don't know what the organization is working on and what each other are working on. So how could you possibly imagine that a non-supervisory staff member is going to know what's happening in the organization? And so as much as we can put, hardwire it into the organization. So put into place on an agenda, we're going to add this item. We're going to check in with this data. And so to Martha's point, one of the things they're doing is they're looking at those I statements and they're creating ways to say, how will we know that we've actually done this or that we're not doing it, right? No one's going to be, you don't write in all of a sudden you're perfect. How can we check in to make sure that we actually are doing it or not doing it? And I sung to them, I'll spare you, but I sung to them that Whitney Houston song, How Will I Know? You know that song, How Will I Know? So that's what I always think in my head when I'm doing those I statements, like, how will I think about Whitney? How will I know? Like, how will I know that we're actually doing that thing or not doing it? And once again, in the beginning, especially, no judgment, but let's have a point that we're checking in and put it on as an agenda item. Or if you have a quality meeting, add an item to check in on that measurement that will tell you you're doing it or you're not doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like that a lot. I'm gonna ask you not to sing this time. We've already been in trouble once with YouTube this week for something that we published that was somebody else's. They shut us down. We appealed it. We actually did win. All we've done was appropriate. So, but I'd hate to have to go through that again and drag you through the YouTube legal morass. Man, we're about out of time, and I've got so many. I want to sort of do this real rapid fire. Martha, you talk to another operator, another culture person, and they say, "Oh man, that sounds so good. You're in a not-for-profit. You got all these resources. You've got lots of time. I don't have time to do that. I've got to keep things going." What do you say to them?
I say your culture is being built around you, whether you participate or not. So if you want to cultivate the culture that you want to create, then you have to invest in the time.
Awesome. Okay, for both of you, quick question. If you could wave a magic wand and get senior living leaders to stop doing one thing that's killing their culture, what would it be? Martha, you go first, and then Denise.
Not listening to your team members.
Perfect. I love it. Denise?
Assuming you actually know what the culture is. You're the executive or you are in a whatever CEO, COO position, your experience of that culture is extremely different than the non-supervisory team members' experience of that culture.
So this is this question I'm going to ask you is something I've been thinking about a lot this last couple of weeks. We are doing some big reimagining of things at Foresight. I'm going to sort of tease it and not tell you any more than that. But part of this reimagining and thinking has been this question: what does great senior living actually look like? And I think that we don't have, I don't know that there's anybody's ever really said, this is what great senior living looks like. And it could be high-end senior living. It could be middle market. It even could be low income senior living. I'll use because he's public about it. And I love it. I mean, I love what Deep Kadu does in Atlanta. He's doing very low income, mostly Medicaid. He's doing an amazing job. So it can be anywhere, right? And so what does the world's best culture actually look like in senior living? And I'm going to throw that. We'll start with you, Denise, and then Martha.
Yeah, the first thing that came to mind was community. So that people living in these organizations are receiving services in these organizations, this sense of connection with each other and with the team members that work there. And the same thing that for the people that are working there, that there's a connection, there's a commitment to each other. And that to me is what a great culture looks like. It's, we're in this together, and supporting each other, and this sense of community surrounding us. We're not serving residents. It's not a hotel, although I think that that's a big sort of movement now that, people want fancy places. But I don't want to live in a hotel for the rest of my life. Maybe for a couple of weeks, maybe for a month, but the rest of my life, nope. I want connection with people.
Great. Martha?
Yeah, just
what's
to add
senior living look like? Sequoia, right?
Yes. I think to follow up on Denise, I agree. I think it's a community. I also think it's where individuals are listened to, heard, and respected. And so that if we can meet the needs and the desires of team members and residents, that would be a great culture and a wonderful place to work and live.
Okay, I'm going to really put you on the spot with this last question. You haven't seen it because I just sort of invented it in my head, but we've talked around it. I would like to have each of you give leaders who are watching this one concrete thing they can do this coming week to make their culture a little bit better.
Get out of their office, have a cup of coffee, sit with team members, ask them about their families, ask them about one thing they'd like to improve in the workplace.
Fantastic. I love that. Denise, top that.
Yeah. Share. I don't want to top that. That's fabulous. Share with their team. So with the executive team, the goals that they're working towards in the organization, and ask for them to share that with their team then as well, and for them to share it with another group, but to have people have a sense of what they're working on together.
I love that too, and I'm going to add my own. I had to wait for yours, so I know what I'd use. But be willing to go to people and just say, "What can I do to make your life better? How can I be helpful to you?" I think we don't do that enough, and it's such an important, wonderful thing to do, and it can really change lives. We are about out of time here. Denise, I know you've got a retreat going. I'd like to give you 30 seconds to talk a little bit about that and what you're doing there, or in case anybody's interested, or maybe you've already filled it up. I don't know.
Oh, thank you. It's the end of September, and it is going to be in Bimini, and it is my 5th time running the Unlocked Retreat, which is all about discovering what's your true purpose. So people that come to it usually are making a decision in their life, or sort of at a crossroads, or kind of thinking about what's next, and looking for that sense of personal fulfillment, that sense of, what is my purpose here, and discovering that. And one of my favorite things is to get emails months, even years later after people attend, telling me what a difference it is still making in their lives, and that the trajectory they've taken because of the experience they've had at the retreat. This year it's in Bimini, where we're going to actually swim with wild dolphins. It's an experience I had last year when I was part of a retreat, and it was so incredibly life-changing to me. That sense of freedom, that sense of calm, that the dolphins bring. And so it's just kind of the perfect addition to the work we've already been doing at the Unlocked Retreat. So, yeah.
Cool. Denise, thank you very much for joining me. Martha, thank you very much for joining me. Martha, particularly, we need more communities like that, because this is how we change the world, as one team member, one resident, one family member at a time. And so I'm just so grateful for what you're doing, and thankful that you're willing to share. I want to say thanks to Jada behind the scenes, who makes everything all come together and make sure we have guests and works on technology stuff that I can never figure out. And so with that, I hope you all have a great weekend. And again, thank you for what you do.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.